Thank you everyone for coming, obviously, to hear us have a chit chat. Hopefully it'll be somewhat entertaining. I'm Uri, I'm one of the sales leads here at Kolleno. So for those of you who don't know what we do at Kolleno, I guess I'll give you a little bit of an elevator pitch. So essentially we're looking to help businesses all the way from SME up to mid-market and moving towards enterprise, get cash in their bank faster. There's a number of ways we do that, but what we find typically is across the market is people are running somewhat archaic collections processes, financial processes, and they have a really disparate financial tech stack, which means all their systems aren't talking to each other. They don't have clarity and they don't have visibility on who owes how much, when, and how. And at Kolleno, what we do is we simplify really their tech stack, including Excel and a notebook, all into one place so there's visibility, but then also adding in things like automation, custom reporting, etc. So I guess tonight, the avenue I'm going to be bringing to the table is that in my experience as selling our solution, I'm talking to CFOs, finance directors and CEOs on a daily basis and understanding their real first-hand experiences of the market and the financial challenges that they're facing.
Great, Uri, and thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for your time. And tonight's really about you. We want to hear from you about what pain points you're experiencing, particularly in this current climate that we're in. That's something that I'm really passionate about is how can we help the businesses and the business owners out, finance people, HR, whatever your roles are. I'm Louis. I do partnerships at Playroll, payroll but fun, Playroll. Playroll helps companies all around the world to compliantly hire and pay their employees and contractors in over 170 countries without having to set up an entity locally. It's a really great, fun product and mission to be a part of. And tonight, the angle I'm going to be bringing to the conversation is mostly around that payroll aspect. How do you pay your people? How do you make sure that they get paid on time, accurately, and that they're happy and they can do a great job doing what you want them to do, which is their job. And so I think this is a really timely conversation to be having. And it's also really nice because Kolleno is a customer of Playroll and Playroll is a customer of Kolleno. So we know each other's businesses well and a healthy relationship. They help us to chase the outstanding payments that are owed to us. So that's happy business, and we help them to employ people in different countries and grow their team globally. So it's a nice relationship.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Oh yes, last but not least, Irina, I work in the customer success team, so I actually speak to colleagues at Playroll quite a lot and helping them not just work through their outstanding, but also any of their due payments. So it's very important to start actually on the due payments, and I get to hear all different perspectives and pains our customers' experience, but today I'll be just moderating the discussion, so trying to stay away too much from commenting. So I guess what we probably want to kick off with is in the current macroeconomic environment, right? With everything that's going on, the high inflation, some of the banks failing, especially the recent SVB story. So how is this affecting companies' budgets and cash flows? But also how having your budget and your cash flow, then how is that reflected into your headcount and hiring? So it would be interesting to hear your perspectives with different hats on.
Yeah, so I think if you look out at the news just the last couple of days, you'd think that all hell was breaking loose. It's really kind of seems to be an extinction level moment, or was over the weekend for some startups in particular. But I think looking beyond that, as business owners, as people responsible for things like payroll and the people in the business, what's really important to think about is just how do I keep doing what I'm doing, and how do I maybe do it at a different scale than what I was doing in the last year when funding was abundant, when business was booming. How do I do it at maybe a little bit of a toned down pace? Or if things are going well, what areas can I maybe cut back on or be a little bit leaner in my operation to make sure that I'm efficient and driving the right outcomes for the business. In terms of headcount, I really think it comes down to a question of this isn't a phenomenon that's happening everywhere, right? We see macroeconomic slowdowns in certain geographies, but not others. We see some countries where hiring and unemployment rates have been at the lowest in history. And we see other countries where it's a little bit more difficult and top of mind. So I hesitate to make any sort of blanket statements about the market as a whole, because we don't want to be, focused just on the venture-backed market or companies in a specific industry. I think if we're looking at different businesses, you have to look at their context and the problems that they're facing that might be unique to their geography, it might be unique to their industry. And the ways that leaders can respond to that are doing things like examining how many people do I have in my company, what roles are they working on, where are they located, and how might then I translate that where into a cost saving, as an example. And so those are some of the questions that I think business leaders are asking now before you make any sort of drastic decisions. It's like, what do I have right now in front of me? What systems do I have in place? What's my tech stack look like? What's my finance stack look like? And instead of cutting things back, it's more about evaluating what do we have, how can it help us get to where we want to be.
Yeah, I think what I can add to that is specifically, the market is shaken up. People are worried. There's Credit Suisse this morning. There's major announcements. So it's definitely, there's a lot of doom and gloom forecasting out there. However, when I'm talking to businesses and CFOs, they're telling me they're on target, despite that, for double-digit growth. So I think the tech sector has the resilience, and it was very much born out of a new way of seeing things, and therefore the leadership within a lot of these businesses is looking for how can we adapt to survive, but also thrive. So for a lot of CFOs and senior leadership, they're looking at things like a stock take on their tech stack. Do we need all of these weird and wonderful tools that we've been using? Every sales rep comes and says, oh, there's a fantastic new tool out there. It will increase our growth substantially, right? And they use it, and maybe it's good, maybe it's not so good, but it's being paid for every single month. And now CFOs and finance leaders are doing a stock take, and they're saying, okay, what do we actually need and what don't we need? And it's interesting for us as a business. That's where we come in and we say, right, what are you spending money on? What could you actually be collecting faster? And I think the pattern that is emerging is people are really looking how they can drive efficiency in the business. That's really the name of the game. How can I use what I have currently, scale it back, and make the business as efficient as possible? We know there's been mass layoffs. I was told kind of through the grapevine of another major fintech that's about to do a huge layoff because I think things have been overinflated and they've overhired and grown too quickly. And now businesses are looking to say, right, how can I scale back and run at optimum efficiency? And from that conversation comes, well, there's a new technology available on the market to actually drive efficiency. And just a conversation I had with the finance director today was their biggest concern of growth is actually headcount. As they grow, they acknowledge not only do they have to increase sales headcount, operational headcount, finance headcount, admin headcount, and their biggest concern is what can I do to mitigate that growth? So while as a business we want to grow, they are cautious of growing their headcount too quickly, and therefore they're looking for tools to enable them to automate as much as possible and to not have to hire another head. And it's not necessarily good for your business, but not to have to hire more people. Conversely, I think from your perspective, Louis, what we see is people are saying, well, I don't need to have someone in central London. I can hire someone just as talented and skilled, maybe in the further out. It's a remote working opportunity. So there are plenty of cost-saving exercises to be had. And I think the same way that COVID taught us how to work both remote and hybrid, I think this recession, not recession, whichever way you want to categorize it, will teach businesses how to actually run an optimal efficiency, where we've kind of been eating, the fat off the bones previously. Now we can actually have to run a much leaner operation, but actually might prove to be a lot more efficient.
Oh, thank you. And I think one probably important point to add here is with all the layoffs and everything, but also if you run in a business and you you do it on credit, right? If you can't get your money back, you need to borrow. And with current interest rates, probably it's not the first thing you want to do. So having both of the products probably in the tech stack is making your life easier. But in terms of the common pain points, so as you speak to your clients, I can name a few, but common pain points that you see on the payment, on the payroll and the compliance side that probably need modernization, and what are some of the practices that you still happening in 2023, but definitely outdated?
I guess I'd just be interested to hear from the audience, and if just by a show of hands, whether you're a business owner or an entrepreneur. Anyone? And do you work in a business? Are you an employee? Are you something else? Cool. Oh, great. Okay, good. Just the reason I ask is because I think it's interesting to look at it from a few different angles, right? There's like, how are we, the stack that you have already, for example, that means something different for everyone, whether you're an employee or whether you're a business owner and you're the person deciding what subscriptions to purchase, essentially. I think on the payroll side, the fundamental issue that needs to just be right all the time, accurate, correct, whatever you want to call it, is the payroll. The payroll needs to just be there every single month so that the employee knows that they can open their banking app and they're going to be paid, and that's just critical. And I think before we talk about what do we need to modernize, what does digital transformation mean, what does actually investing in a full automation system look like for payroll, the real important thing is just, do you have the organizational processes in place to even make sure you're doing that fundamental step right every single month. We see businesses that have an Excel sheet and they're using that to manage kind of their payroll, everything. They have reminders on their iPhones about when they're supposed to send the bulk wire transfer for payroll. And I think those are the practices that people are calling into question now, because the ultimate person at the end of that is the employee. And if they don't get their payroll on time, they're going to be upset. That's going to have repercussions for the rest of your business. And so while there are lots of tools and systems you can invest in, you can save money with some sort of ROI over time in terms of efficiency or hours reduced. Really, the important thing is what are you trying to solve? What problem are you trying to solve for? It might be we're trying to pay our people on time, no matter where they are. It might be we're trying to make sure that we have the overdue payments in our bank account so that we can pay our people on time. And I think starting with those sort of fundamental questions is actually the first step before you start to say, what can you buy? What have our VCs recommended for us to buy? What software should we invest in? All of these kind of things. So making sure you get the fundamentals right is really critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, on that note, something I've seen personally is selling to both kind of the upper end of the SMB all the way to mid-market is pains and problems scale with businesses. So businesses who start off, as a small operation and sometimes rapidly grow or sometimes grow over a number of years, often their pains will and their inefficiency will scale with them. So where they've been doing things manually when you're running, for example, a payroll of 5 or 6 employees, and suddenly you find yourself with 50 or 60 employees, but they're still using the same process. So that pain has actually just been exacerbated. And what I see on a day-to-day basis is where a company has started off, they're using something like Xero, they've moved to something like NetSuite, but they're operationally still archaic. They're operationally still using Excel, like you said, with notes. The number of group financial controllers who I've spoken to, and I said, where's all your information? Oh, it's in my notebook. Well, if you lose that notebook, well, then what happens? I have no notes of who needs to be chased up, what the reasons were, what the complaints were, why there's a dispute on a particular invoice. You might have an invoice of £25,000 and there's a dispute on it. Now it's logged as a dispute, but why there's a dispute is in someone's notebook, right? Which is in 2023 kind of ridiculous. And some of them will say, oh, but we'll feed that through into Salesforce, we'll log those notes. But we all know that human efficiency, and anyone who's in sales here knows, sales ops are always on top of sales to update, the CRM, are the notes up to date, is all the information there. And it's the same is true in collections, where you have collections agents who just aren't maintaining their notes. And that's just one example of how a lot of businesses are running old-fashioned processes because it worked when they were maybe a headcount of 5 or 10 people. The other thing, I think, trend we're seeing is also payments. So whereas businesses, bank transfer and checks, and I spoke to someone yesterday, they're still taking a lot of checks, right? And they're manually processing them. But things like open banking. So open banking is a bank transfer, it's just in a matter of minutes, and you have the full data trail, whereas you don't have to do things like the manual reconciliation. And a lot of businesses, although they might have heard of it, there's so many new products and there's so many new tech stacks out there, it's hard to differentiate or even know what any one of them does. So just, I think, being educated in what availability is out there is really making a big difference to the market. And I think we had one of our clients who actually kind of ran a mini marketing campaign to all of their clients saying, hey, by the way, now you can pay us on open banking. And they started to see payments coming in faster because it was so easy for their clients to go on their phone, open up the invoice, go to the payment portal, select pay, and the job's done. Whereas before they had to log into their bank account, pull up the invoice reference number, manually input the data. And it's small things, but these small things can drive a huge difference. So these are the types of trends I think we're seeing across. And the challenge of business owners or decision makers within a business, I think, is staying up to date with what technology there is and what technology I really need, as opposed to the technology that's just a nice to have.
And maybe just still staying on the same question, but would you say maybe the more archaic method across both products is everybody's still using Excel and Outlook, in a sense that everybody's trying to drive their workflows by saying, oh, I'm going to go and use a filter and I'm going to chase this customer because they're most overdue, but they don't have any background of what happened before. Have you already spoken to them? Then you need to go to Outlook. Then you need to chase and find the right email to follow up on the right email chain, but actually you might have replied actually to the wrong email. And I think there's a lot of kind of segmentation of information that is not all in one place, giving you the right CRM to understand what happened. Why am I following up? Or maybe it's in dispute. Like one of the best, I think, examples from my side I've seen from one of our clients said, oh, I have a traffic light approach, it's fine. Who's red, I'll chase, but how do you define it? And so I think these are probably the more archaic methods that I see when I have to actually onboard the customers. But I don't know if you would.
Yeah, I think, we joke Excel is our biggest competition. And I don't think it's going away. Excel will always be there because of the massive functionality, but it shouldn't be your first port of call. It shouldn't be the scenario where you're going to Excel and running, VLOOKUPs or whatever it may be, or pivot tables because you need to know who do I need to chase today, right? It should be, and a lot of the businesses we work with, when the value that they instantly see is when they say, look, your collections team come in and their diary is done for them. They sit down and it says, these are the people you need to call today. These are the emails you need to reply to. They don't have to sit through an Excel spreadsheet, sift through their account, their Outlook, and look through their notebook of what do I have to do today. It's all there, done for them. And this is where efficiency comes in and is really manifest, because it's taking an hour in your morning to look through your Excel spreadsheet and do those pivot tables and VLOOKUPs to say, oh, these people owe more than them. And even if they have a credit policy and a robust credit policy, one company, they're doing about 30 million a year, and their credit policy is literally run an Excel filter, who owes the most, start with them, and then work your way down. And that was literally their credit policy. And what happens is, well, once you've collected that one invoice of 50 or 60,000 pounds and you work your way down to the 20s, but the 100, 200, between 1 and 1,000 pounds, they get neglected, right? Because they're always chasing the big money. So now what you find is you've got an overdue of sometimes in the millions, comprised of invoices of 50, 60 or 70 pounds. But no one wants to chase that, because why the hell am I going to call someone and say, hey, you owe me 50 quid? That's not worth my time. I'd rather chase the 20,000 pounds. So it's just simply automating things like this, where they're getting constant reminders, emails, text messages to say, hey, by the way, you owe us 50 quid, click here and pay. And then before you know it, you've got that 50 pounds. And it's these small changes that are producing those maximum efficiencies within businesses, and that we see literally across the board from SMB all the way to mid-market, where there's elements of the businesses which are just being neglected because no one actually wants to do it. And that's where automation really comes into fruition.
I would just add quickly, I'd say I think the data is only as valuable as it can be, depending on what it's integrated into, depending on what other systems it interacts with. So you might have it on an Excel sheet and it might be efficient for you in that moment, but is it working? Is that the best thing for your team? Is that the best thing for the way you have your operations set up? And then looking at, okay, what type of data is this? Is it really important, something critical like employee sensitive data? Okay, then where should it be managed? What other systems does it need to interact with? So I think the way it's used in the organization really can dictate what system ends up being deployed for it.
Yeah, and I think, having spoken about those challenges and kind of the pain points, how do you see organization actually reacting and responding to those challenges they identified?
Yeah, I think it goes back to evaluating what you have and where you want to be. And then trying to bridge the gap with maybe investing in some new solutions, or maybe looking at where can I create some additional efficiency. On the payroll side, really it's going from highly manual processes to maybe adding in some automation as the two ends, and what's in the middle. It's working with people who are experts in this area to understand what's available to me on kind of the fully automated sense versus what's much better than what I'm doing right now, and then taking those slow steps to get from one end to the other. I think you can't expect organizations to just adopt the new shiny thing immediately. It takes time, and we know there are other repercussions, like if you're used to using a system and you've had people using the same system for 20 years, why would they change it unless it's going to be a real game changer for them? So in terms of real instances of adopting it and making a difference, I guess what we see on the global payroll side is these businesses who have said, wait a minute, my local payroll in London is really expensive. It's a big number every month. I've never thought about changing that. The only way to change that, if I'm just looking at my immediate world, is to reduce people in London, but not thinking about actually, I don't have to necessarily reduce people in London, but I could go and hire someone in Poland, as an example, and do that in a relatively easy way compared to maybe how it was 5 years ago. And that cost saving there and efficiency gain I'm going to get is going to end up being the return on investment that I'm looking for. And so less about reducing what I have, but more about where else can I look, not just what systems am I investing in, but where can I hire people, where can I employ them, how does that payroll look on a global level compared to just my local, immediate London expensive market.
Yeah, I think what I can add is we always talk about in the sales process, it comes down to people, process, and technology. You've got to have the right people running the right process with the right technology, and it's literally as simple as that. If you don't have people who are willing to adopt, use, learn about the technology, it's not going to help. The best technology in the world. If you don't have the right process for that technology, again, the best technology in the world just won't operate at maximum efficiency. And then there's actually having the right technology. There's a lot of technology that does something very similar to their competitors, but it's not quite the same. It's really finding that solution that's perfect. And it's like buying the right suit. It has to fit, for a man, it has to fit across the chest. It has to fit across the waist, the length of the trousers. If the technology is not quite suited for your business, it might have all the bells and whistles, but it's just not going to help. And one of the themes actually that I've seen pop up quite recently is, we actually won a deal because of this, is our onboarding and training. And one of our now clients said to us, what differentiated you guys from some of the competition we looked at is they kind of just said, look, here's the technology, good luck. And walked away. Once the contract was signed, or we were far enough into the deal, they basically said, look, and we very much invest, to Irina's credit, in our onboarding and training process. We have a hand-holding approach because we understand that if we don't invest in your onboarding and training, that opportunity will just churn because I'm not going to use the technology to its fullest capacity. So that's something I think that's also starting to trend, is that because there's been such a boom in technology and people purchasing technology, they're now saying, well, 1 second, this I don't even know how to use half of the functionalities. And therefore, people are looking for technologies that will not just solve their problem, but also impact how the people within the business run that technology. We do a quarterly business review with our clients, so they'll say, right, are we using this technology to its fullest capacity? Are there improvements? What other trends are you seeing within industries that we could be implementing? In fact, I had a conversation with one prospect today, and he said, look, it looks to me that the process you're running is actually better than ours. So I'd be willing to change our internal process to match yours because it's just so much more simple. And it's these types of conversations which will help, as I said earlier, drive efficiency and drive change within businesses.
No, I think this is absolutely great. And one thing, like, imagine you use your iPhone, but there's hundreds of settings that you don't even know about. And actually having a person telling you what to do and how to do it is very valuable in the world when you have hundreds of products and technology to choose from. So I think the driving of adoption and being hands-on with the clients is something that definitely helps to adopt the new technology. I know we've nearly closed into our time, so maybe lastly, given how much you speak to different audiences, what would you say, what would be your advice to the finance managers and the CFOs on how to effectively manage their financial and human resource needs?
I think definitely balance the long-term view with the medium-term view with the short-term view. You can look at the short-term view and say, it looks like there's panic in the market right now, or people are saying this, or someone's saying that, or I've got pressure from my investors, whatever it might be. You can look at the medium-term view and say, actually, there are some macro indicators that are really positive for my business, or my sector as a whole is doing pretty well right now. And you can look at the long-term view and say, if I'm doubling down on what I've been doing right, I'm continuing to grow the business sustainably, then it's going to be a really interesting opportunity in the long term. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in that kind of short-term hype train based on what everyone else is saying. But my advice would just be balance that kind of short, medium, and long term. Set those milestones for your department, whether you're a CFO or whether you're a CEO or whatever, and make sure that you have accountability against those. But a medium-term milestone for a CFO might be, instead of reduce headcount, it might be find a way to hire more efficiently. And those are two different ways of looking at the same problem. And so how do you, just having that longer term perspective can allow you to then transform the actions that you're taking in the short term and maybe not be so drastic, but instead be incremental.
Yep, I couldn't agree more on on that point in terms of having that long and short term perspective. A lot of people, panic often drives irrational decision making, and people shoot themselves in the foot out of panic. I think two other trends we're seeing is, as I mentioned earlier, that stock take. So look at what technologies, processes, and you're using, and is it right for your business at this stage? A lot of businesses outgrow their tech stack, but they're still paying for it. They're still using that technology that suited them really well when they were doing 5 or 10 million. Now they're doing 30 or 50 million. It doesn't suit them anymore, but they're still paying for it. So that stock check. The other thing I've seen within the market is people really looking to consolidate their tech stack, because they have a lot of, as Irina mentioned earlier, they have a lot of different technologies which aren't talking to each other. And what they're looking to do actually is to consolidate so that all the information is really centralized. They have a very strong and accurate picture of what's going on in their business, from which they can draw their conclusions. And people love to talk about data-driven decisions, but it's where's that data coming from? How is it held? How is it communicating with your other data sources? And I think that's a really common theme I'm personally seeing, is people saying, look, I've got this technology and this technology and this technology. If I can get rid of those and just have two pieces which talk to each other perfectly, that will help me drive maximum efficiency and also sustain growth. I'm not going to have to increase, have another tech guy or developer to just oversee this one piece of technology. And that's kind of the trend that I'm seeing from talking to finance directors. They're really looking to slim down and make a really lean but efficient process.
I think very similar to me, and I think we have a very ongoing phrase at Kolleno, do it right and do it at the right time, right? So you need to choose the right technology for you, be whichever business you are, you need to do your due diligence, but getting the right technology indoor at the right point, connecting all your data sources just helps you so much easier. Imagine you walking in the morning, being able just to look in, oh, this person owns me, or I need to pay payroll at this point in time, and you can easily do it at the touch of your phone, and everything's connected, everything's talking to each other, and that's making your life easier. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, and I'm gonna open up to the floor. If there are any questions, please.
You don't bite. Yeah.
I think it's appropriate for both. I think it sounds like your products are both relevant for more what you SME to what you call mid-market.
Yeah.
From the time guys are startups till they get there, they build up all this debt, this legacy, whatever they say, Excel things. Does your onboarding process, both of you kind of speak to this, not specifically, but more like philosophically, like does it speak to, how do you take all the notes that are in Excel and move them into the tech? And the same with the payroll, how do you move from Excel to tech? I think that's one of the biggest problems to solve. I'm interested to hear how you guys deal with that.
Well, we also have a CSV upload, so you can easily update your data with all the notes you have, and it will be updated in the client profile. So that's no problem at all.
I believe we have a CSV upload as well for your payroll data, so that can work. I would just say, and really it's taking, again, that data in whatever format it's in and just making sure that it's interacting with the other systems as the business scales up. That might just be more technologies that are brought on. That's why that integratability is really key. And then it's making sure that the processes and the humans behind that, running those processes, have the education, understanding of what they need to do to actually use the nice tools at their fingertips.
So one thing I'll add is whether they use a connector, so with our platform, something like Xero, QuickBooks, or they do a flat file CSV upload, it's actually quite a healthy data cleansing exercise, because what they'll do is we'll upload it and then they go, oh, wow, I didn't realize it was 750 grand over 90 days. And then they can actually see in the platform, some of it's 800 days old, right? And they're like, well, why haven't you written that off, right? Maybe they've paid the tax on that and now they have to claim the tax. There's all the exercise of onboarding actually forces the client to go through a data cleansing where they can say, do you know what? There's actually $500,000 here that I need to write off, or that I need to send to some sort of legal action or whatever it may be. So for a business, we certainly try and hold their hand through that process, and Irina's very good at that. But that's really also very important for businesses to do, because they don't do it. They'll just sit on their books and they age, and the information becomes aged, and they don't clean it, and it kind of forces that cleanup.
And especially actually when we're talking about the CSV uploads, it's quite actually funny. Sometimes they'll say, oh, but this invoice is still outstanding, but it was paid. And I was like, yes, because you never marked it as paid, because you never reconciled. And so there's always, as you were saying, the data cleansing, but also people realizing some of the manual tasks that they had to do, they didn't do. And therefore actually putting technology in place almost nudges you to do all those boring tasks. So if no questions, then please, you can grab Yuri, you can grab Lou. There's a couple of us as well from Kolleno here. Grab us while you enjoy drink and the rest of the food. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, everybody.